Welcome to Ambleside Flourish, brought to you by Ambleside Schools International. This is our series on the pursuit of maturity with Dr. Bill St. Cyr, Executive Director of Ambleside Schools International, hosted by Ambleside School of Colorado. Part 3.
As you know, we've been talking about the pursuit of maturity. Because I've said that's why I'm involved in this work. You know, you say, why did Mary Ellen and I get up in the morning? Why would we be motivated to put forth the kind of energy and effort it takes to be involved with all of these schools? And it's because we long to see children grow up free and happy and healthy, with vital relationships with God, with self, with others, with ideas, with art and music and poetry and geometry and science. We long to see them grow up to maturity. We've been talking about the various stages of maturity, and I borrowed Jim Wilder's stages. I think he's got it right. There's the infant stage, and in the infant stage, the focus is learning to receive from others. And then the child stage, where we learn to take care of ourselves while being kind to others. The adult stage, where we learn to take care of two people simultaneously. In other words, I can take care of me, and I can do the rather complex task of taking care of another person, particularly if that other person gives off strange, effervescent kinds of signals that, if you have a Y chromosome, you don't always understand. Today we've talked about those the last couple of times, and tonight I'd like to talk about parent maturity and elder maturity. To be a parent is to have the maturity level that would allow me to sacrificially take care of children, and an elder to sacrificially take care of the community. Now, a few things before we get into it. First, just a couple of quick reminders. What are some of the tasks of infant maturity? Learning to live in joy, learning to trust, to organize myself into a coherent personality, and that's done through imitating others. I learned to master my body. I learned to be peaceful. I mean, did you notice how well 4- and 5-year-olds are beginning to master their body? I learned how to rest, to go from a highly energized state to a calm state. The primary task at child level of maturity is to take care of myself while being kind to others. So I learned how to ask for what I need. I can pursue many different kinds of satisfactions. So I learned to enjoy many, many different things. I can take care of myself. I learn to take responsibility for myself, to ask for what I need. And then, again, to review, as an adult, I learned to take care of myself and another person simultaneously. I can remain emotionally stable in a difficult situation. In other words, when life gets stressful, I don't go into major brain dysfunction. I can contribute to the community and be consistent with who I am. All right, let's move to what I would call for tonight precursors to parent and elder level maturity. In other words, if I'm going to function effectively as a parent, what has to be true about me? And the first thing, and this might be a little surprising, the first thing is I need to be a cup half full rather than a cup half empty person. I need to be, in other words, I have to have a positive orientation. Why in the world would that be important? And don't we know the difference? Don't we know the difference between the person who comes into the room and immediately sees what's wrong with everything and everybody, and that's their focus, versus the person who comes in the room and sees what's worth celebrating, what's worth being thankful for, what's good. And the level of joy one experience correlates very highly with that orientation. There's about 25 years ago, I was first exposed to something that's called positive psychology. A guy by the name of Martin Seligman, who's a professor in Pennsylvania, a psychologist, looked around and he said, I think we've got this whole psychology thing wrong. Because what psychologists have started to do was the focus was on, quote, abnormal psychology. And we wanted to find out what was wrong with people and how we could make them average. Now, it's because if you're a scientist, you basically collect all the data and then you want it all to fit in a nice, normal distribution so that you can get kind of a good average of where people are supposed to be. And so what psychologists did is said, if there are people that don't fit, that they're not average, and we want to get them up to average. And what he began doing was, instead of studying that, he said, let's look at the people who seem to really do well in life, who report high levels of life satisfaction, who have good marriages, who are prosperous and fruitful, who seem to be happy and engaged and constructive in the way they do life. And instead of studying people that are sick, let's study people that are healthy and then ask, what makes them that way? And the field of positive psychology was born. And it's very interesting what they discovered. That if you raise somebody's general positive outlook, they will get what has in the fields become known as the happiness advantage. That a brain that is positively oriented, as opposed to negative, neutral, or stressed. So a brain that's joyful. I mean, it's good to be me here with you. A joyful brain actually functions 31% more productively than a brain that's negative, neutral, or stressed. That the research shows that a salesman who has a positive, joyful brain is 37% more effective in sales than someone with a negative, neutral, or stressed brain. That doctors who are positive are 19% faster and more accurate in diagnosis than a doctor with a brain that's negative, neutral, or stressed. And what positive psychology began to recognize is we've got the equation actually for success backwards, because we tend to think, if I'm successful, then I'll be happy. And of course the problem is that whatever success means, whatever the metric is, it keeps changing. So if a salesman meets their sales goals, new sales goals. If a businessman meets his revenue goals, new revenue goals. Always increasing. The goal keeps moving. And what these psychologists and researchers came to discover was that it's actually the other way around. That someone who is generally positive and happy, grateful and joyful, they're the ones that tend to be much more successful. And that's a little bit of a digression, but the reason I want to say it is because it's the joyful, happy parent that is far more effective. You see, if I have to choose between being in a joy state, good to be me here with you, versus being with an anxious state, and I'm just a little brain, which am I going to go to? Right? If I'm a little person, I want to attune with joyful, peaceful brains. And when I'm attuned with them, I can best learn, best grow, best thrive. I mean, often parents try to instruct their children when the parent themselves is in a low joy state. And that's the worst possible time to instruct your children. Because if I'm at a low joy state, one, I'm not really clear about what's happening around me. Because my brain's not functioning all that well. Increased emotional distress, decreased functioning of the frontal lobes of the brain. So the more emotional distress I'm experiencing, the less capable I am to really know what's going on and how to best respond. The second thing is little ones, anyone around us, when we recognize a distressed brain, we don't trust it, and we don't learn from it very well. So, a precursor to effectively functioning at the parent level of maturity is that I stay at a high joy state. Now, obviously, all of us will experience emotional distress. So one of the secrets is to learn how to quickly recover from that emotional distress. Love, one of the things I discovered a while ago was that love and joy actually go very much hand in hand. That I cannot love someone effectively if I'm not in a high joy state. The reason is that the way we're wired is if I'm experiencing a high level of emotional distress, something's really gotten to me. I will always take care of myself first. That under duress, I take care of me. It's only when I feel strong enough to manage the situation in my own internal world that I'm free to actually care for another. I think that may be behind the Apostle John's thought in his first epistle, in which he says, we can only love because he first loved us. I think what John was saying there is that if you know that you're okay because God loves you, and it's well with your soul, then and only then is one freed up to really love others. Because I'll always take care of myself first until I know that I'm taken care of. And this is much more than just kind of external circumstances. This is in my own internal world. That if somehow I'm not doing life very well, I feel internally like my world is threatened. And I can tell that because my stomach's in knots, my pulse is racing, my muscles are tightening, my skin's tightening. If I'm not doing life very well, I will take care of me first. We're always fundamentally wired to be self-protective. Now, to be an effective parent, to function at a parent level of maturity, I need to move beyond that. I mean, because the whole job of being a parent is, I will take care of you. So we see how important this kind of positive, grateful orientation is, because the higher one's general level of positive gratefulness, the higher one's joy capacity and the more one lives in a kind of good to be me here with you state. A positive brain state makes loving relationships possible. And it's one of the interesting things about romance is romance puts us into the romantic phase of a relationship where suddenly all the flowers are beautiful and the sky is always blue. Puts us into that joy-filled state when we can actually then very easily care for another. The struggle comes when we reach the point that what most marriages go through: romance, disillusionment, and then hopefully joy. That's the general three-stage progression. Once we realize that, this other person does have some flaws and is a little bit irritating at times. Once we get to that state, then we generally settle into what's our normal joy level. And if our normal joy level is low, then we're easily distressed. We easily go into brain dysfunction, and we find it difficult to remain in the brain state necessary to function at a parent level of maturity.
Thank you for listening to Ambleside Flourish's series on the pursuit of maturity with Dr. Bill St. Cyr, Executive Director of Ambleside Schools International, hosted by Ambleside School of Colorado. Ambleside Schools International fosters an educational renewal based upon the pedagogical insights of British educator Charlotte Mason. Serving an international community of parents, teachers, and schools, Ambleside makes a living education accessible to all. For additional information regarding Ambleside Schools International and training opportunities for principals, teachers, and parents, please visit our website at amblesidschools.com.